Asato ma sadgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityorma amritam gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Krishna. Hari Om. I will be giving a series of talks on how to look life differently. There's one way of looking at life, which is an ordinary way of looking at life. There's another way of looking at life, is a very extraordinary way of looking at life. In fact, the extraordinary way of looking at life is a very ordinary way. But what has happened due to wrong thinking, due to complicating thinking, because of our mind has been distorted and polluted, what is simple has become complex. And therefore, the whole art of looking at life wisely is stop looking at life otherwisely. So therefore, how to look at life differently? Yoga says there is a way of looking life from your lower self called the Jivatma. There's a way of life looking from the higher self called the Paramatma. This shift of perception from the lower self to the higher self will lead you from samsara to nirvana, from a sense of deficiency to a sense of sufficiency. We feel sufficiency in life is achieved when the more and more you acquire name and fame, more and more you acquire wealth, you think sufficiency is reached. But then yoga tells us, the Gita tells us, the Upanishad tells us, there is sufficiency in the world, but the question is, one is deficient. Since there is deficiency in us, when you look at sufficiency, sufficiency will look very deficient. Therefore, this samsara is basically eating away life. There's a certain type of madness which has been set in our life, and therefore this madness appears to be sane, and sane people appear to be mad. Please reflect on the story. Please feel the stories as I'm saying. Reflect on the story. There was, it seems, in a certain place in Europe, when the war was taking place between the Germans and the British forces, a certain place was all basically smashed and destroyed in this war, and then it seems there was a bomb, a very powerful bomb placed in that small town. They did not know where the bomb is placed, and therefore the whole place, the Germans and the British forces all ran away from that place. Everyone ran away from the place there. Only there was a mad asylum, a mental hospital, right? And those mental hospital came out of the hospital, and they alone were living in that town. Everybody had gone. Then since they are mentally not clear people, mental asylum, so all of them did not know the danger of a bomb, so they all were there going around, right? And while they came out of their jail, the story goes, slowly their madness disappeared. Why? Because there were no more doctors to make them okay. There were no more people telling them, you are mad, you are stupid. And therefore, their authentic self emerged. They could be what they could be with no judgment, no evaluation, no branding, no labeling. There were so-called wise people were them, not to psychoanalyze them. So they became a very authentic being, and since they became authentic beings there, and slowly their madness, the story goes, disappears. And when their madness disappeared, one became a general, one mad person became a general, another person became a pope, another person became a dentist, another person became this. So each one took up roles to their mental fantasy, and they were really acting as though one is a general, one is a dentist, one is a doctor, one is a musician, even though he has no background of music. Since they were authentic to themselves, the story goes, they slowly madness disappeared and they became really sane people. But they continued playfully playing the role. One Britisher who was an expert in bombs, it seems he came there and identified where that bomb was, and when they got to the bomb, he was starting diffusing that bomb. And as he diffusing the bomb, the so-called mad people which have become actually sane, right, they were observing them and they were laughing, dancing, right. And this British soldier, very brilliant in diffusing bombs, he said, "You fellows are crazy, you have gone mad. Now bomb is anytime going to blast and you are all happy." And one of the psychiatrists there says, "You are overreacting." Right? We are overreacting. Please read Swamiji's book, Manase Relax, please. Right? You are overreacting, and this person gets angry. And in the whole process, they were able to diffuse the bomb. The message immediately went to the Germans. Now the Germans attacked. The Britishers were there, and both of them were fighting and killing in this. And all these so-called mad people who became sane, they were saying, "My God, these people have gone mad. For a simple bomb, they are fighting at each other. I think they are gone mad." So the Pope started preaching to them. The general started saying, "Come down, come down." A policeman came, right? And these so-called mad people were saying, "These people are unnecessary overreacting over a round ball, which they call as bomb." And there was so much of killing which went round. Friends, this is a story. Feel the story now. Tell me, who is really mad now? These so-called mad people or this people, the so-called sane people? The sane people were killing each other, butchering each other, torturing each other, whereas the so-called mad people were really enjoying, not at all destructive, so playful they were. Now tell me, who is really mad? The so-called sane people say the other is mad. In fact, they are more mad than the mad people. Isn't it, friends? More mad. Because why? Here, a so-called madman was a now politician. He was a politician and he was enjoying being a politician. He was not destructive, right? And he was enjoying himself. Now, look at the so-called sane people who are politicians. Now, are they enjoying being a politician? Yes or no? They are not enjoying being a politician. They are serious. They are miserable. They are destructive. Whereas the so-called mad person who is a politician, he is enjoying, he is not destructive, he is so playful. Now tell me, who is mad? The so-called sane are more mad than the mad. In fact, the way we are living life, says the Gita, the Upanishad and the Yoga, the way we are living life, if you closely observe, we are really a moodaha. Shankaracharya's Bhajagovindam says, Bhajagovindam, Bhajagovindam, Govindam Bhaja Moodhamate, O fool. So therefore, at present, the way people are living life, hell is a reality. And heaven is only a hope and a fantasy. Isn't it? So the way people are living life, hell is a reality. Heaven is a hope and a fantasy. The way the so-called mad people are living, just see, heaven is a reality. Heaven, they are like heaven. They salute, they do this one. Heaven is a reality and hell is only a concept. So therefore, please see this, how our life is being really lived there. Now this state of living is what is called as Jivatma, a student. Jivatma is this state of being. And why we are like this? Because we are hypnotized. Our rishis and guru says we are all hypnotized to wrong thinking. And since we are hypnotized to wrong thinking, Therefore, we live in a world as though it is hell and heaven is only a fantasy. We are hypnotized to wrong thinking. A Hindu is hypnotized, he is a Hindu. A Christian is hypnotized, he is a Christian. A Muslim is hypnotized, he is a Muslim. And therefore, this hypnotized state of being is what is called as Nisha or darkness. Ya Nisha Sarva Bhutanam Tasyam Jagrati Samyami, says Lord Krishna in the Gita. What is night to an unwise person is day to a wise person, and what is day to a wise person is night to an unwise person. We are in a state of hypnotized being. This hypnotized being is a Jivatma or the lower self. This represents Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita. This represents Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita. In the hypnotized beings also, in the sleeping beings also, there are divisions also. More sleep, less madness, more madness. Even there are divisions. But Arjuna represents that state, very accomplished sleeping individual, very intelligent sleeping individual. This is the Jivatma. Now the Paramatma means higher self, represents Lord Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, whose consciousness is really awake, whose hypnosis has really died, who's looking at life not from the lower center, who's looking at life from a higher center. And when you look at life from a higher center, is looking at life differently. When you look at life differently, you will see a rose is a rose is a rose. But an hypnotized person, he sees a rose and says it's my rose and not your rose. I like it and I dislike you liking this rose. And therefore, now this represents, please see, a Jivatma. The whole Bhagavad Gita is a dialogue of two states of consciousness. A state of consciousness which is sleeping, but Arjuna is just not a person who is sleeping, who has a desire to be awake. There are certain people who are sleeping and they feel they are awake. But here Arjuna represents a person who is sleeping, who is in conflict, who is in tension, but wants to come out of it. That type of student, Shishyasteham Shadimam Tvam Prapannam. In the Gita, Arjuna says, I am a student. I know I am sleeping. But my intention is to wake up. And therefore, help me, O Master, how I can really wake up. Only when Arjuna said, Shishyasteham Shadimam Tvam Prapannam, I am a student, please teach me. That means a master can only teach a student who is aware he is sleeping but does not know how to wake up because his eyes are open but his consciousness is asleep. But there is another person whose eyes are open, consciousness is asleep, and he has an illusion he is awake. To such a person, very difficult for any guru to teach them. A student is here whose eyes are open, his consciousness is asleep, and he wants to know how to see that the eyes sees and not the eye concludes. Right? And when Arjuna said, Shishyasteham Shadimam Tvam Prapannam, when he said, now Krishna, the state of consciousness awake, starts teaching. Now these are two states of consciousness. And it is a Gita, it is a song. It's a Bhagavad Gita, it is a song of two hearts. Our heart which wants to awake and a heart which is awake but wants to really connect and share. Now this state of consciousness I want all of you to be aware of. Hari Om Tat Sat.